At BP, we're not just talking strategy, we're making it happen, growing our upstream business with 6 major new projects in 2025. 4 already live, 2 more scheduled this year, expecting to add 135,000 barrels a day to peak production, helping drive long-term shareholder value. For more on our growth plans, visit bp.com/strategy at work.
Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders, this got Billy!
This feels fucking awesome.
And Portland can't say shit!
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
Ooch of a gooch! All creatures great and small!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Gold Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. I am Jeremiah O'Shan. Joining me today for what we're going to call How the Phase Was Won, because this is normally how the West was won, but since we're talking Leagues Cup, we're going to talk about Phase 1. Anyway, I guess Phase 1 is a pun as well. Charlie Boehm, one of my favorite people to have on this program. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hell yes. Wow. The O'Shan blessing. I'm so fortunate. Thank you. Thank you. I'm over here unfazed. I'm just trying to stay unfazed.
Yeah,
all this,
I know.
You know?
It is. So yeah, I want to talk basically about Leagues Cup because I think it's been pretty fun. Now I don't know how the attendance is shaping up quite how MLS and Liga MX had imagined, but I think the people who are going, who have been watching, have probably been pretty entertained. Mostly exciting games that have a lot of intrigue, lots of red cards, lots and lots of red cards, plenty of penalty shootouts, mostly really competitive games. But we may as well, we don't have to spend too much time talking about the Sounders' first game. But just real quick, what is to me, the Sounders seem like they have been the best team so far in this tournament. Obviously, the 7-0 win is doing a lot of the lifting, but I thought it was a very professional win over Santos Laguna yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you could quibble, I guess, after the goleada in the first game that they let Santos hang around a little bit, but that would be
sure.
quibbling. And I'll have to say too, the whole Georgie Manungu shirt sending off, jersey-based ejection adds another a delightful, there's been a thread of weirdness through the Leagues Cup going back to its earliest days when it was a one-off experiment with 8 teams per league or something. There's always been that after dark element, and there was the
first year was the raccoon year, right? Or whatever.
Yes, and I believe Mike Petke's there was the cat on the pitch. There was Mike Petke having an absolute career-changing meltdown about the refereeing.
Yes.
And,
that was pass him out tray, right?
I think so. And writing an insult on a piece of paper and handing it to the referee, if I'm remembering right, a Spanish insult that will get anyone canceled then and now.
Man,
it's done in the way that he did it. So yeah, it doesn't seem. I guess I'm sounding like an OG here, although it wasn't that long ago. But actually, I've come to see Leagues Cup as kind of living in the same awkward but durable space as the Club World Cup, where it's has all these elements of AstroTurf and purists, disgust because it's perceived as something new and imposed by the executives and a cash grab and so forth. But like both of the tournaments are like when it actually gets started and there's interesting stuff happening on the field and you see the space that it's filling or that what it's bringing that's different. I think it's got legs, whether we approve of that or not. And so I'm, it's part of my job to cover this tournament, but I've found it sort of intriguing. And I do just think, we'll get into the attendance stuff a little bit here. I think, there's been some disappointing crowds and some non-energetic environments, but then when you watch like RSL America, it was a fantastic game. Pretty good crowd, pretty interesting dynamic. I think when Liga MX clubs bring out a different sort of supporter, or maybe supporters who are not going to the MLS games in their local market, and it's like a challenge, both implicit and active, sort of to what the MLS teams have done. Right? It's making noise in your home stadium. It's coming in and maybe the teams feel like or act like the home team, or drawing a different level out of players. I think there's just a different energy to some of these games, which is different from what you would get in a typical Wednesday night at this time of the league season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just talk about what I've seen in person, and that's been Cruz Azul and Santos Laguna fans showing up to Seattle. Cruz Azul fans, I think, probably didn't outnumber Sounders fans on Thursday, but they were very vocal, and there were times in the game where they were more, you could hear them better because they had a more organized, like the Sounders, like the ECS was just not there in numbers really, especially for the Cruz Azul match. And so there wasn't the same sort of organization to the Sounders chants, whereas Cruz Azul fans all sort of seem to be born with these knowledge of the chants. So like everyone there knows the chants to do and how to do them. And so there were moments in the game where it had almost a road-like atmosphere. And Santos Laguna, not as organized, not as plentiful of visiting fans for that game, but they were still very vocal and you could hear them at times. But I think the energy in the stadium was good. It was, there was about 18,000 maybe for the Santos Laguna game. There was about 23,000. The 23,000 for the Cruz Azul game actually felt very robust, and it felt like a good atmosphere. It helps that the Sounders poured in 7 goals, so there was a lot to get excited about. But when there were big moments in the Santos Laguna match that it got up, I love the vibe and the energy that comes from playing these international matches. And even if it isn't that way at every stadium, you can still see why people want this to work.
Yeah. And it's just a different sort of competition. I mean, I think the players benefit from playing different opponents. There's just a different soccer culture that you're encountering with Liga MX teams, and even the penalty kick tiebreakers. It's sort of fun that they sort of semi-stole / debuted this idea in MLS Next Pro, and now it's in Leagues Cup. And it's like I think if you're supporting a team that's going to play in the playoffs, or even if you think about it from national team perspective, knowing that someday there's going to be you could have a player in a World Cup knockout match having to take a penalty kick. Like I think that's super fun, a good experience to have to deal with that, to step up to the mark and deal with that environment. And of course it's an interesting entertainment product. I think obviously the format has shifted. They're going to continue, I think, tweaking this to make it fit into the calendar the best it can. But there's something there where, and I think it's intriguing. And also too, the simple fact that we're late enough in the regular season now that it's over in the league for a lot of teams. And this gives you something to play for. It gives some new life. It gives fans a reason to come out. And I mean, look at the Galaxy. Like they look
Galaxy,
like a
great
very
example.
different team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Galaxy looked like I guess they ended up falling at the end to Cruz Azul, and they lost the penalty shootout as well. But they win their first game 5-2. They were beating Cruz Azul for a good chunk of that match yesterday, and they are playing, like you said, they look like a different team, and they actually have something to play for. They actually, I don't know how many people realize this, if they advance, they have hosting rights for as long as they stay in the tournament, courtesy of winning MLS Cup last year, which seems a little backwards. I have to admit, we were literally just in the Discord of the Sounder at Heart Discord trying to figure out the hosting privileges, which are not super clear. Like, we're digging through the rule book and trying to understand how hosting privileges work for the next round. And it's not 100% clear. I think there are a bunch of there are like 6 Liga MX teams that would host with quotes around it in the quarterfinals, even though it would be played at an MLS stadium. But it's sort of squishy because Leagues Cup has the right to sort of move the games to wherever they want the games to be played. So like, there's sort of like, it almost looks to me like if Seattle, because they have one of the more reliable fan bases to show up to these things, if they are in a knockout stage game and they're not playing the Galaxy and they're maybe not playing Club America or Cruz Azul, they might just decide that the Sounders are hosting regardless. So I don't know. It's very, very opaque, I guess is the right phrase of this.
I mean,
but go ahead.
No, the format in general is like nobody's really. I'm sure there's. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this isn't the first time ever that a format like this has been utilized, but it's very pretty unique, unprecedented around here, right?
They borrowed, like, the system is broadly, like, very, very broadly borrowed from what they call the Swiss format, right? Where the thing that they're using in Europe, where it's this like modified table that they're doing, where it's not a traditional group stage, and it's like, in the most vague sense, it's borrowed from that. But it is not the same. It is not at all the same like what they're playing in Champions League and in Europa League and what's the other Conference League? I think it's called
Conference. Yeah,
doesn't
Europa
even matter.
Conference.
Whatever. Anyway, but I don't think anyone else is using this exact format where you have 18 versus 18 and then you go to a quarterfinal. And let's talk about the format a little bit. I like it on paper. I like that you have as many MLS versus Liga MX matchups as possible. I think that is the whole point of this tournament. Why not maximize it? I think what we're going to end up with, though, is in round 3, a lot of more dead rubber games than is ideal. Like a bunch of games between teams that have, because there are only 4 teams from each conference, each league advancing, there's a bunch of teams that are effectively already eliminated, and that's probably not ideal. But the trade-off is you get a bunch of games against interleague games, and it moves reasonably quickly. Like, this is not, I think one of the biggest challenges with the old format was that it was a month out of your season, and that felt like a big ask.
Yeah. And MLS gets until a much lesser extent, but ever since they paused Pro Rel, Liga MX as well get knocked for not having enough stakes to the regular season, right? And that there's too much tolerance for mediocrity and so forth. Well, this is an extremely demanding format. And the fact that year one here, no one's actually sure what it's going to take to advance. So you could be in really good I mean, there's only, I know we have a few more, not everyone has played twice. But we're fairly deep. Has everyone? Okay. Sorry. I couldn't remember who. So we're well into phase 1 here, and there's only 3 of the 36 teams have taken full points. Like I'm just shocked by that. That's just this interesting quirk with the PK points aspect of it. So, you may find out that that game where you conceded the first or second game where you leak a late equalizer, and you drop a point or two, does that wreck your chances or not? Well, you kind of have to stick around and see what happens. Maybe this is all a fiendishly clever plot to make as many fan bases as possible pay attention to as much of the other team's games as possible, because I think the Sounders and the Timbers can feel pretty good about their advancement prospects, but everybody's going to have to be secure in them. Scoreboard watching. Right. You can't be certain.
Right. And I think that is one of the beauty, like at the high end of the competition in terms of like who's going to actually advance has a fair amount of intrigue, because no one has their spots. Like, I don't think any team in the whole tournament has actually clinched advancement at the end of round 2 of phase 1. Right. So you have a whole bunch of teams that don't know what's going to happen. At the bottom of the table, you do have more teams than is probably ideal who aren't going to be playing, who know they're already out. But the stakes are very real for all the teams at the top end. And I guess maybe that's a good trade-off, where the Sounders, even though they won their first 2 games, that they won the first game 7-0, really cannot rest on their laurels. There's a pretty plausible scenario where if they were to lose against Tijuana in round 3, that they could not advance, because there are something like, I think there are 9 teams who can get to at least 7 points, which you would imagine it's not hard to imagine that at least 4 of those would get to 7 points. And if, so basically if half the teams win, half of these, 9 teams, these 8 teams that aren't the Sounders, were to win, the Sounders would be in a position where they have to at least get a point from their final game, and they'll be one of the last teams to play. So anyway, I do think you're right that the stakes at the high end of this table are good. It's just, I don't know if there does end up being, for a tournament, there ends up being a lot of games that just have no value at all.
Yeah, I do. I will take that, I think, for one round over that past scenario where you had everybody was cramming in games through one chunk of the summer, the previous 2 seasons.
Right.
And then if things don't go well for you in Leagues Cup, you're sitting on your hands, right? And
that's this is better. I totally agree with you. This is a better format than the previous one. It'll be interesting to see how they tweak it. It's going to be interesting, and it is funny also how it swings from one day to the next of, MLS is clearly the better, is dominating this thing. And then Liga MX comes back. Like yesterday, the Sounders were the only MLS team to actually win their game out of the 6 that were played. I also kind of dig that I think it's been 6 games every day, which does lead to a fun sort of, there's a real momentum to this tournament, I think.
Yeah, it has that tournament feel where you're kind of, there's a deluge and a complimentary sense of matches in the early rounds, and maybe you can catch the spirit a little bit and keep an eye on what's happening elsewhere. And they've got the enough of a time zone spread and whatnot. And I think just like we talked about with CWC, it just sort of charms you, right? Because there's inevitably storylines and stuff happening, and the teams are up for it. I still think the dynamics. I love having 18 rather than having the weird clunky, the fullness of the MLS. And I think these are the kind of games that our players and coaches in MLS and everyone need more of, where you see what that level is. There's some of these teams, even outside of the very wealthiest, most talent stacked elite in Mexico, there's just a really, I think, a kind of a culture of craftsmanship and like a high technical level across these squads, and mistakes that you might get away with in an MLS game are much more likely to get punished. I think those are just good experiences. And I love the culture clash element within that too. Like you see some of the Miami, I guess it was, I forget what it was, who did they play last? They played Necaxa. And there was real needle to 2 teams that have no connection other than Fernando Gago having been a La Liga rival of the Barca boys in Miami. There was a real needle to the game, and the trash talking that ensued. I thought it was a good entertainment product.
Yeah, I guess if I were to tweak this a little bit more, I wonder if it would make sense to have maybe 3 fewer teams from each league, just so you have that much more concentration. But honestly, I think I could live with this format. I still want a little bit more clarity on how hosting works. I think ultimately for this tournament to reach its full potential, there's going to have to be some games being played in Mexico. I understand the reasons that they're not, which are mostly financial. My understanding is the Liga MX teams want this tournament to be played in the United States because this is the way that they are reaching new fans and all these reasons. But if we want this to be a really competitive tournament, it does feel like there's probably going to be some tweaks that will have to happen. But this is, I think, undeniably format-wise, a step in the right direction for a more competitive tournament.
With Robinhood, not only can you trade individual stocks and ETFs, you can also seamlessly buy and sell crypto. at low costs. Trade all in one place. Get started now on Robinhood. Trading crypto involves significant risk. Crypto trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto LLC. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services. Crypto held through Robinhood Crypto is not FDIC insured or SIPC protected. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening. Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. But moving into the actual play, who has impressed you other than, obviously the Sounders have been the most impressive team. You don't need to go on about them unless you want to. But who else have you liked? What have you liked from this tournament? Who are the teams that you feel like have shown the most potential to, potentially win this thing?
Yeah. So the Timbers have looked like a kind of a different squad.
This show's over. Sorry, going to be canceling the show now.
Well, listen, you think of this as scouting, right? Because it's quite possible.
Yeah, I know.
You could have a Cascadia final here, right?
Oh my God. That would be kind of amazing. That would be amazing. Actually, I would be into that. I might be into that. A Leagues Cup final between the Sounders and Timbers. I might be able to get into that. Speaking of which, the red card that Querétaro picked up against Timbers, I realize maybe the Sounders can't cast stones. Georgie Manungu picked up a red card for a celebration. That's bad. But the complete crash out of the Querétaro player who got 2 yellows for dissent on the same play.
Even every player who takes a red has to feel a certain amount of guilt when they when their teammates come into the locker room afterwards, right, about what they've inflicted on them. But I think Manungu can hold his head a little higher given the circumstances. Compared
he did score
to
the winning goal.
Yeah, I mean the just absolute rush of blood to the head. I'm going to look up. I had the kid's name tracked down because he's a good player. It was uncharacteristic as far as from my limited knowledge, but just the brutal timing so early in the match, and to just saddle his teammates with, they're already far from home, playing against a team with some life, and to just get crushed that way was just brutal. I mean, that's one where you're buying drinks or whatever it may be for the foreseeable
his
future.
His teammate comes up to him and is like, "What are you doing?" Like, just was all could not believe that. I mean, and if anyone missed it, basically what happens is we should figure out who this was that did it. But
Perlatza is the guy's name. Yeah.
Okay, so he goes in, he makes a tackle. It's a questionable tackle, but whatever. The ref blows the whistle. He gets up and he immediately spikes the ball in the ref's face, and the ref shows him a yellow card. And then instead
Automatic.
of just like, right, no
Objective
question.
play. Yeah.
And then immediately he just is in the ref's face again. Like not even a beat of what am I doing here? I need to chill out. He's just like, no, I'm going for it. I'm getting my money's worth. And he just goes into it again. And the ref is just like, what? You're going to kick. I'm kicking you out. Like, what do you?
Yeah. What did you think was going to happen there? Yeah.
What did you
Jonathan
think was gonna happen
Pererazza is his
there?
name. The guy's
Yeah.
27 years old. He's been with Querétaro for most of the last 5 years. Like, it's just a crazy breakdown to have happen. And it was, but to teammates credit, I mean, that was the 45th minute. So to play more than half the game down,
they were actually
they were right there.
They were probably the better.
Portland
Yeah, I
let
thought they
them hang
were
around.
Yeah, to the degree that you can say you're frustrated the Sounders let Santos hang around. They were at least playing 11v11 the whole time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Timbers are the only team in the whole tournament who have not allowed a goal yet. I think you can make light of the fact that they managed to score 4 goals on 4 shots against San Luis. They got, whatever. You can argue about the XG and all that stuff, but look, you score 4 goals, even if it's only on 4 shots, that's what you get the spoils. They haven't allowed a goal yet. I agree with you. They're a team that has to be reckoned with. Who else is on here that you are impressed by so far?
Yeah, so considering they've only taken 3 points from the first 2 matches, Club America, again, the way I found myself thinking about them the way that we have Inter Miami over the last year and a half, where when you have a team with that much quality and a winning culture within the locker room, like you have to pour dirt on them. I mean, they've rallied repeatedly. They've got this resourcefulness. You can tell that they've been in tough situations before. They've rallied. So considering they're sitting 10th, in the Liga MX table, and they're going to have to play well and get a result to have a chance to advance. Club America, I think, is troublesome. Of course, it's a no brainer to say the same thing about Tigres. Los Gigantes are Los Gigantes, right? Like Tigres have taken full points. They haven't looked super troubled. These teams, the elite of Mexico, are so used to playing big games, right? They typically they have the playoff experience from the Liguilla format. They're most of them are involved regularly in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They are accustomed to coming to play in the U.S. Like they've experienced all this before. They're never short on talent. And the way that this falls in the Liga MX calendar, they're not too worn down, right? They just got a few games in before in the league season before they flew up to the U.S. to get involved in this. So I think it works out well. Managers have reasons to go for it here, especially those wealthier, more successful teams. So I think they've been quite good. Toluca, same thing. I mean, they got pushed a little harder, but you see the quality and the pedigree, and I think we may get that familiar sinking feeling when the quarterfinals actually kick off. I think it's on the 19th, because for a lot of these teams, you just survive to get to those high leverage moments, and then once you're there, I mean, they're not going to care who they're playing. There's and especially now, I think it's going to be tough. It doesn't sound like it was a serious hamstring strain for Messi, but I'll be surprised if he'll be back in the next few weeks in time for a potential quarterfinal game. So, even outside of Messi, there's really no one, I don't think, in MLS that's going to really, or any atmosphere that's going to truly give pause to the Mexican Giants. And so they know when to pour it on. They know when the games matter most and when the moments matter most. And they don't even have to win the games, right? They win the moments, and that takes them where they need to go in the games. So I think there's a little bit of probably maybe feeling a CONCA Champions vibe in a couple of weeks here.
Potentially, yeah.
And again, maybe Toluca has less of a pedigree in CONCACAF, but I think they'll be right there. The fascinating thing is that the other two, the two other teams above the qualification line right now on the Mexican side are Juarez and Mazatlan, who are not gigantes, and they're above their expectations right now. And can they sustain that? Can they have that kind of LA Galaxy type vibe right now, or the way Miami were 2 years ago, where it's like, hey, this is what we've got. Like we're not assured of being in these situations very often, so let's go for it.
Well, and Juarez is a particularly interesting team because this is sort of, I don't love the term project when we're talking about clubs and sort of what they're doing, but Juarez is sort of a project. They're sort of a expansion team from the U.S. North America, from how we view of it. They aren't, this year is not their first year, but they are very much a newer team. I think they've only been in existence for like 10 years. And they did gain promotion from back in the days when they did have promotion and relegation in Mexico. And they have historically not been very good, but they are this team that is sort of digging into a well of potential talent. Juarez is, of course, like the sister city to El Paso. They have historically been cities that are very connected, and so it's always been seen as sort of having potential. And my understanding is they've, in the last couple years, they've really dug into this youth movement, and they have been able to be much more competitive in recent years than they had been in the early phases of their promotion, when they were really sort of like struggling at the bottom of the Liga MX table. And they have gotten a couple impressive results so far in this tournament.
Yeah, when you look at it from the 10,000 foot view, it's just a fascinating scenario overall, because we, on both sides of the border, I think because of the border, we sort of marginalize that combined community. If you were to combine El Paso and Juarez, I can't remember the exact place it would rank, but it would be one of the top biggest metropolises in North America. I mean, it's two massive cities side by side that are only considered different because of the river that runs through it, and all the different liminal aspects of that border, which is political, cultural, everything. And I think Mexican soccer in general, and the decision makers have always seen that as an area of potential, right? It's growing.
Yeah, 2.7 million people in the two cities combined.
Yeah,
just huge.
And it's significant, and the same way that Club Tijuana get everybody fired up, right? This idea of a cross-border project, and San Diego is now taking elements of that that are foundational in what they want to do. So, but there's potential there, but it's been very elusive in terms of realizing it. The previous club, I think it was Indios, I think it was their predecessor, that they tried this before, and it went belly up, and it didn't shake out. And when there was, I think that was happening amid a much more there's still violence, of course, in the borderlands, and too much of it. But the previous Juarez project, kind of was even more embattled by the cartels and all the repercussions of the violence in that region. But if they can sort of get a foothold and start to build a fan base and sort of build an identity, I think there's real potential there. The question is, can you get far enough into that? Because as you mentioned, experiencing the Cruz Azul supporters, I got a tiny version of this. 12 years ago, my wife and I eloped to Cancun to the Mayan Riviera to get married. And my wife, bless her heart, she signed off on going to the Copa MX final. The tournament no longer exists. They've since shuttered it. But at the time, Atlante, which was a lower tier Mexico City club for many decades, and then they relocated to Cancun, have since relocated back because they didn't want to, they couldn't make it work. But they happened to, they're in the second tier at this point, I think, but they reached the Copa MX final, and Cruz Azul makes it too. And so I'm in this, the stadium in Cancun it's like a worn out equivalent of an American high school stadium, really old, weathered, not much to it. And they apparently were giving tickets away for the league games. But then because Cruz Azul was in the final, this was a sellout, a hot ticket. And I discovered that like Cancun is like kind of like a Vegas element, because there's all these people from all over Mexico that go there for economic opportunities to get jobs in the tourist sector. And so it was a Cruz Azul home game basically. And we had to bargain for tickets on the street. I had a great experience, but I was realizing like, okay, so this whole idea of the big Mexican clubs, I mean, they cast a lot of shadow even in their own country. And so someplace like Juarez, you have to win over people who probably already have an existing allegiance. And so that's a challenge. But it's like I can't help but root for it. I mean, maybe it's my Texas roots or whatever, but I hope they can get some traction with this tournament. And there's a couple of sort of like hey, that guy names on the roster. So anybody who's been watching MLS for a while, go and look at it. Jesus Murillo of ex-LAFC is on the squad. There's a couple other guys that you may recognize. Who I know Chris Aquino kind of bounced around.
Chris Aquino is a former Sounders Academy player. He was actually I think he was the second leading scorer on Defiance last year. Transferred to Juarez, and he's playing. He's not. I don't think he's eligible for this tournament. I don't think he was named to their roster, but he is in the Juarez system, so to speak. He's in their youth setup, basically. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's an interesting project. They have these very bright green jerseys that they've worn. They beat Charlotte 4-1 in their first game, and then they scored a pretty impressive upset over Cincinnati in the shootout in this last round, with their goalkeeper saving Evander's penalty of all things. It was a pretty impressive performance, I thought, from Juarez. And Mazatlan is another team who is sort of similar story in that they are not as established of a team, but that's partly because they moved from, where did they move
Morelia.
from? They were Morelia. Oh, that's right. That's right.
So there's a Rui Diaz tie-in here. So
and an Obed Vargas tie-in as well, because he grew up as a Morelia fan. But yeah, so it's Mazatlan and they've also not been historically very good, but they are in this nice little run of form right now. Who did they beat? They beat LAFC in an epic shootout
on penalty kicks. 11-10.
And then they beat Dynamo, which is maybe not quite as impressive, but still, I mean, not a bad win, especially on the road against Dynamo.
In
Dynamo
Houston,
in Houston, exactly. Not kind of up and down. Just before we get out of here, I did want to touch on the attendances of this tournament, and I don't know, I'm of two minds. One of them is, look, I think if you give this tournament 20 years, let's just say, it inevitably feels like it will eventually, there is an inevitability to, if they give this enough time, that it's going to be popular. But right now, I think the thing that struck me is, like, Charlotte played Chivas yesterday, and it looked maybe not empty, but it was much lighter attended than I would imagine the organizers imagined a Chivas game literally anywhere in the United States would look like. Do you get a sense that this is a real concern, that the attendance numbers are almost across the board pretty bad? Even like I haven't seen how it compares to last year, but I know last year they were acting like they were averaging something like 17,000 a game, and they acted like this was a great deal, even though that's a lot less than a regular season game would average in MLS. Do you get any sense of the feelings around the attendance?
It's always, attendance in general is always a sore spot, I would say, and it's something that certain clubs are very sensitive about and don't like to get into. And I confess, like, and I think it would probably be hard you'd have to really report actively, extensively, and talk to a lot of people and get highly placed people to share the data. And I don't think they'd be super inclined to, but I don't know how they're calculating this, because if you see a league game, and you look at the number on the match report, it's going to always include, tickets distributed is the famous phrase, right? And season ticket holders and stuff. I don't know the details in terms of like whether how many season ticket holders are being counted and so forth. On paper, the Chivas Charlotte game got 24,207. Now,
which is not a horrible number.
It's not bad. Watching the segments of that game that I watched, it was kind of, it seemed like it was rattling around in what is an NFL size stadium, right? I mean, that's a huge stadium. They typically aren't opening up the upper deck, and I don't know how they handle that on the day to day. I know a lot of stadiums will not even open that up until they have to, whereas others, if they can, particularly if you have a game like that, maybe where you think you'll get a big walk up, maybe you open everything up to try to offer more affordable tickets in the upper sections. They've gotten kind of creative. I thought it was interesting in the brief time where they had their own TV contract for the Apple deal kicked in. Charlotte were doing enhanced reality.
That's right. They were
placements on the upper deck and kind of like
I forgot about
giving
that.
us a little taste of the future, possibly with how they sort of coped with the empty upper sections. So I don't know. And I think what's probably the starkest to me has been the New York games, where the games are at Red Bull. Both NYC I think has played. I mean, they're not using the baseball parks as far as I know for all the cost and availability reasons. So everybody knows that's inherently awkward to have NYCFC playing at Red Bull at Sports Illustrated Stadium, FKA, Red Bull Arena. And Red Bull has an attendance challenge to start with. Their own fans talk about it more than anyone. It's a beautiful venue and there's not enough people in it on a week to week basis. And then I don't think I think Ohio too is where I think Chivas was based. Maybe Chivas or Monterrey were using Ohio. Maybe Cincy is one of their bases. So I'm sure there's a mix of both, like what they would where they'd ideally want to be for demographics reasons versus logistical simplicity. Cause again, big Mexican clubs can draw anywhere, but New York is maybe not quite the same density as somewhere in the Southwest. And some of them are more bulletproof than others. I think you would assume that Chivas would be able to pull from anywhere. And North Carolina is a different story from New York. So yeah, it's tricky. And I think you get again into a gray area where are you focused on making this a spectator experience first and foremost? Is this emphasized to be a television and broadcast product, or are you going to try and split that baby, right? And I think there's challenges built into that.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and it'll be interesting to see how they evolve that aspect of it, because, like, I don't know, one of the other things I noticed yesterday was, or maybe it wasn't yesterday, but the Cincinnati game against Juarez, they didn't actually, best I can tell, they didn't actually announce the attendance, and that was a game where for Cincinnati, who seems like they draw well, like butts and seats are one of the best butts and seats sort of teams.
Yes.
And that looked like a really empty crowd for Juarez. That was part of a double header, I think, where Monterrey was playing Red Bull for some reason. I think that game was also at Cincinnati. And
that's part of the seeding process. Yeah.
Right. And they didn't, best I can tell, they didn't announce an attendance for that one either. So it's, I don't know, there are some kinks to work out, I think. And I would be fascinated to know if this tournament is getting eyeballs on TV and streaming that maybe the league games aren't, because that would be another way of they can sort of justify it. That's something we will probably get even less information on. Although there are a bunch of games that are on broadcast television that presumably will have real, vetted rating numbers. So who knows? Maybe
that's a big element of this. Sorry to cut you off, Jeremiah, but the games that I think it's Univision is picking up some of the games for Spanish language television, and that's a key data point. Not just whether we get a ratings figure off of those, but also the games they pick and the times and the teams that are involved. Because that's, I think it's been established in these couple of years we've been talking about the Apple TV deal. Offering the equivalent of a simulcast, basically, right, to the TV networks is not necessarily the most attractive thing from there. But when they do pick it up, I think that tells us a little something about like those networks' approach to the tournament in general, and then how they value different fixtures within it. So the fact that I know that they're going to have the final on. I mean, that for me, that's just huge. Like, I think people within MLS are slowly have been coming around to the reality of the visibility problem that's inherent to the season pass deal. And every time you can get that any segment of your product, anything you're doing onto the more mainstream television OTA environment, I think that's really important. And if nothing else, that, this can jog the mainstream audience just a tad.
Absolutely. Well, Charlie, it's been great catching up with you. Once again, I appreciate you lending us your sort of more national voice to talk about phase 1 of Leagues Cup. Maybe we'll have you back on as we get deeper into this tournament, assuming the Sounders are around and we still care. But Charlie, you got anything going on that you want to make sure to share? I hear you are now starting to be on. You were on Scuffed again.
Yes, I'm the Scuffed crew had me on earlier today. I'm hoping to spend a little more time with them, maybe every now and again. So I hope anybody will come and check that out. You know, it's obviously from a U.S. men's national team perspective, but we kind of wander around a little bit. So hopefully it's a compelling listen for a broader audience also. And then, yeah, we got just a few games to go. The stretch run, MLS cranks up here. And before we know it, we'll be into the international windows of the fall as well. So you know how crazy it gets over the next few months. So I'll just try to put myself out and about and appreciate everybody who listens and clicks as always.
Absolutely. Well, Charlie, thanks again for coming on. This is No Sarietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. I will just remind everyone that that August is a huge membership month for us. This is a month where 30%, believe it or not, of our annual revenue comes in August. So just want to encourage everyone to check on your membership, make sure it's up to date, make sure that you have, and if you want to become a member, this is a great time to do it. Just another reminder that if you want to become a member, all paid members have access to our ad-free RSS feed, which is a nice little perk. And and thank you for everyone who is supporting us already. Thank you for making this possible. This is a lot of fun. I love this project. I love being able to have people like Charlie on and talk about all kinds of things. And with all that said, I'm Jeremiah Shan. I'm going to get out of here. We will catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.